Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today we're super excited. We've got Andrea Harkins on the show. So Andrea's joined us from the US today. So she's a blogger, martial arts blogger and positivity blogger, mainly predominantly for women. She's involved in the martial arts scene. She trains in martial arts as well in Tang Soo Do. And we're super excited to get her on the show. So hello, Andrea.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
We have so much to talk about, right?
Good.
Indeed. I'm not sure 40 minutes is going to be enough, so hopefully we'll keep to a strict timetable. So I normally get the privilege of asking our guests the first question. And it's normally, can you give us a bit of your backstory, where you grew up, how you were educated, and ultimately how you managed to migrate into martial arts?
Yeah, I'd love to share some of that. I was actually raised in a small state called Rhode Island, and I grew up there with my family and did all the normal kid stuff, no martial arts or anything like that, just, a childhood. When I was 18, I decided to go to college, and I moved away from my family and headed to Florida, where I earned a degree in literature in college and met my husband there. And so that was my beginnings and my initial education. I went to school for a paralegal certificate and worked as a paralegal for many years. And just recently, last year, I earned a master's degree in organizational management.
Oh, cool.
But martial arts was never part of my life in those years when I was going to college or high school or anything like that. It wasn't until I met my husband and we became boyfriend, girlfriend in college, and we eventually got married after college. And one day he said to me, the community center down the road has martial art classes. Are you interested in trying those? He had taken a few classes as a kid and he had fond memories of it and thought it would be great for us to do together. And I was like, I don't think so. That's not for me. I had no background in martial arts, no experience. I didn't really know that much about martial arts, honestly. So we went to that first class at the community center, and it was really cool. I mean, there was a lot of people. There were a lot of people there, a lot of students. It was this big center. It was very organic, I guess you would say. I mean, it was in Florida. It was hot, but there was no air conditioning. There were like fans, and there were only a few women there, but there were a lot of men practicing martial arts. And I could hear people yelling, and I could see them throwing each other and doing katas. And I just thought, no, I don't see myself ever doing this. Get me out of here.
Was it the scene that we'd imagine where you've got all these sweaty men in white dough box with big sweat patches under their arms? And
it was sort of like that. It was. There were a few women instructors and only a couple of other women actually taking the class. And so that wasn't really the part that scared me. The part that scared me was the fact that I had to reprogram my brain from all the things I was taught about how to be a woman. Like, we don't yell, we don't break things, we don't hurt other people. Not that martial arts are about hurting people, but if somebody's attacking you, you want to be able to defend. But I had never considered really those concepts. And so it was really a retrain of my brain that I had to do. And that's what was scary to me. But, the thing was, up to that point in my life, I had never really given 100% to anything. I was always kind of that average person, or at least that's how I felt about my life. Okay. But when I started learning martial arts, I started to improve and learn skills, and people would point out the fact that I was so focused, which I never recognized as a trait that I had. So here I was doing well, progressing, learning new skills, feeling more confident, starting to like what I was doing. And that really kicked off my love for martial arts at that point. And I trained for many, many years there. I ended up teaching for that instructor. And that was the beginning of my martial art training and in my life in martial arts.
So what was the trigger point? Because just then you said, no, it's not for you. What actually made you think you would give it a go?
I think it was after that first class, I said, okay, well, let's try it again, because my husband wanted to continue going. And I said, let's try it again. Okay, I'll go a couple more times. And thankfully, by going a couple of more times, I recognized that I didn't have to know all of that stuff right away, like how to yell properly or how to throw someone. It was like learning a language. You're going to start from the beginning and learn your little skills and techniques as you go and build upon it. And when I recognized that, I realized that was something that I could do. Right. And as I started to get better, then I was all in. I was like, okay, I'm doing something and I'm giving 100% to it, and I'm actually good at it. So I'm going to stick with it.
No, it's interesting because I have a lot of students in my own school, and I predominantly teach children, and then I have a family class, and then the advanced class for the more seasoned students. And when I entice to grow my club, I have the children in, and I say to the parents, okay, so now your son or daughter, they've got to a certain standard, they're going to join the family class. Wouldn't it be good if you came in? Oh no, I need to get fit first. Oh, I couldn't do, and so getting those parents into the class, it's about educating them that actually we don't want you to be fit, because what you're going to learn in the white belt syllabus will just be enough to push you as a beginner. And then as you slowly start progressing through the grades, you will acquire more fitness, you will acquire more skills, and you will continuously step through the staircase of progression. And then before you know it, you look down and you're at the black belt, and you think you've reached the summit of the mountain once you're a black belt. You'll look down and think, oh, how did that happen? And where's the time gone? And look what I've kind of achieved. And then there's another summit to meet. So it's interesting that you thought that.
And you don't always know what people's drivers are either, do you? And it was interesting saying that, because obviously it's 40 odd years since we first stepped in the dojang when we were kids, and I'm the same as Jackie. We have loads of families in our class, and sometimes you look at people and think, what actually is it that they're getting from this? I can't fathom it. It's almost like they, maybe like a lady on her own, she'll come in, she's got no family or no kids with her, but she just really loves doing the patterns or the katas and doesn't want to spar and then doesn't really do the gradings, and then turns up week after week, and 2 years down the line they're still there, and you think, well, and I'd love to understand what it is that's driving them, but you don't know what else is going on in their life, do you? That's the thing. It could be a whole basket of different reasons. It could be for fitness. It could be they might have problems at home. They might have come from you just don't know, do you? You just really don't know. You don't want to delve into those sort of personal questions either.
Yeah. And I know we'll probably talk about my podcast later, but that's really what my podcast does. It allows a platform for people to share why learn a martial art. And, some of the stories are very traumatic. Why?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And some of the stories are just like me. I wanted to try something. I felt like I was good at it. And you're right. You never know the backstory, but in a way it doesn't matter. It's sort of like a clean slate that they know you don't know anything about them, and they just there to learn. Yeah. So.
And I think that's the one of the beauties of martial arts, isn't it? You could be a CEO of a multi-million-pound business, or you could be a dustbin man, but it doesn't matter. When you turn up and you put that dobok on, you're all the same and you're equal. For that hour, 2 hours of the day, you're all equal, and it doesn't matter where you've been in your life, what you've been through, you're all treated the same, aren't you, in that time?
Yeah. And I'll just say for women, I think that's super important too, because they're not a woman. They're a martial artist, and you're a student. And so whether you're a woman, a man, a child, wherever you are in your life, you are a martial arts student, and that's very empowering for everybody who learns a martial art.
So did you ever participate in the competition side of martial arts?
No, I really wasn't competitive, because I didn't start martial arts until I was 26. And at that point, I really I just really didn't have any desire to compete. It wasn't a requirement in the program that I did. I know it is a requirement for most, and I can understand why it's probably important also. We had some sort of fight nights, sparring nights in the classes that I did participate in. And at our exams, it was always a situation where you had to perform in front of a large crowd. So I had that kind of experience, but I never really participated in competition. And part of it too was just that I had so many commitments already. I was married, I was working full time. I had limited hours when I could get to the dojo, and honestly only went like once a week for probably a couple of years. And so it was a slow progress for me. I was like a white belt or a yellow belt for like a full year because I just couldn't get to class enough, So no, I didn't participate in competition, but I did everything I could.
Can you remember that?
For my rank.
Can you remember that feeling when you first punched somebody in the head? But joking aside, you're saying at the beginning you've had to retrain yourself, all these things that a lady shouldn't do. You shouldn't shout. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're wearing this equipment and you actually get to punch someone in the face and kick them in the head. And I'm interested to know your thoughts on it, really, and how it felt.
Yeah. It was very empowering. It was still very scary to me. The first time that I sparred, with a little bit of aggressiveness, other than, learning it at a white belt, a green belt stage or whatever. But I was honestly the most afraid about not scoring. So, I had this big focus on the fact that I'm not going to be successful at this because I'm not going to score a point. I have to hit the exact right spot to score a point. And that was so much my focus that I don't think I even thought about as much about what I was doing, to someone else or that I was kicking or punching another human being. It was just like, how can I score? So it was an interesting view of sparring. But, learning to kick and punch the bags and to spar was always very empowering because it was something that I never thought I would ever do. And so it was very exciting, but it was always scary to me. My heart always pounded before I had to spar with someone.
Yeah, the adrenaline's pumping.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Jackie, in your club, but sometimes we have the smallest, petitest women come in who look like they wouldn't hurt a butterfly, and all of a sudden they get that sparring equipment on, and they turn into animals, and it's like, what? We need to get this girl in the competition.
Yeah, that's one of my daughters. So I've got two daughters that both have done taekwondo throughout their lives, and one of them, she can spar, she does the patterns well, but she loves just doing the classes. The other one doesn't like doing the classes, doesn't like the patterns. She's really quiet, but put her sparring gear on, and my youngest one, and she's like a different person. It's like this pursuedom comes out of her, and she's off, and that's what she loves. And then she goes back into her quiet, mild-mannered self. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a transformation. It's a transformation. Yeah, it really is. So it's fun. And actually, when I took some Taekwondo a couple of years ago, and I had to spar like this 14-year-old boy who was like 6'2", and I thought to myself, I'm just gonna go back to the way I always sparred, and I'm very aggressive. Like I keep going in, and I just kept backing him up to the wall, and his dad said, no one's ever backed him up to the wall. I said, well, I don't, because I'm not afraid. I'm just, I'm going to use control. I'm not going to hurt him, and not that I'm a great sparrer, but the fact was I was so focused, and that was one of my traits always, was being very focused and determined. Mm-hmm. And so every time we sparred, he's like, okay, now don't hurt me. I'm like, I'm not going to hurt you. So it was fun.
Did you get to black belt? Did you and your husband get to black belt eventually?
Yeah, we actually, I started training in 1989. I earned my black belt in 1994. I earned my second degree in 1998 and took my test when I was like maybe 3 months pregnant. So yeah, we progressed. I took other styles over the years, Tai Chi, Kung Fu a little bit, and Taekwondo a little bit as well. But I really focused on teaching. We started teaching, my husband and I, after we earned our first degree. We decided that we wanted to teach our own program. And we thought, well, how are we going to do this? You know, we've never really taught our own program. We've only taught for our instructor all these years. And we decided that we would we would start in a volunteer way. And that way we could get a lot of experience under our belts and help kids and all that kind of thing. So we began teaching in a low income neighborhood where there was a community center. And I remember being really nervous going into it and thinking, gosh, I hope I can really teach and really do a good job with these kids and these families. Yeah. So we began teaching there, and we were going to do it for like a year to kind of get experience under our belt and give the community center a little boost with, you know, and we loved it so much, and the kids really needed it. I mean, they were from broken families. They didn't have any money. They were in bad situations, but they would come to class and they would practice. And I have a picture of it. Actually, a newspaper came and said, oh, look at this instructor. She's teaching these kids for free. And it was going to be like a year-long thing. And we became so close with the kids and their families. And there was a brother and sister. Their caregiver had passed away during this time. They didn't have anywhere to go. So my husband and I thought, well, let's adopt them. You know, that maybe we can do that. And we actually started talking about taking these students in as our own when their family came forward from another state and helped them out. But it just showed the commitment, and that year-long stint that we decided we were going to do turned into 7 years where we stayed there. Employees came and went, but we were always there for 7 years. So that was our first teaching together. And then over time, we began teaching at a YMCA. My children took martial arts. They have 4 kids. 2 of them earned a black belt. 1 of them became an instructor with us and taught at a YMCA for about 8 years as well before I moved here. So it evolved, and it just became an amazing experience. And so I never really, because I took a Tang Soo Do system that was very unique, like it wasn't fully traditional. It had Aikido, it had Jiu-Jitsu, it had a lot of things. So when I got older and even when I moved, there was no other comparable style where I could, advance.
Okay.
So
yeah.
That's kind of why I stopped at the 2nd degree. I just devoted myself to teaching and kind of didn't have the time or the ability to advance in that system any longer.
You think though, in those 7 years, you just think about how many lives you've changed. It's really, I mean, especially from when you got kids and families from those type of backgrounds, and that's the amazing thing that we do as martial arts instructors, right? We're not just, yes, we do it to make a living. Yes, it's a sport we love, but it's what you're giving back to the community, isn't it? And you don't always sit there and think about, each one of those children, each one of those students that's got their belt with you or got their black belt. When we was talking about this earlier on the podcast, you get these youngsters come in and, they don't know their lefts and their rights. They got snotty noses and they don't know what they're doing. All of a sudden, 5-6 years on, they got their black belt and they're looking smart and they're entering their competition and winning.
And their heads up. Yeah, their heads up and they're confident.
Yeah.
All those things that martial arts can bring to you.
And it wouldn't have happened without the martial arts, would it?
Right. And the other thing was that we treated them with respect and we treated them like they were important, where sometimes none of them had ever felt or seen that before. No. And we can do that as instructors in any class, but it was especially important to these kids who were struggling. So it was a great experience and one that I'll never forget. In fact, and this was way back, and a couple of years ago, I received a phone call and the person just said, do you know who this is? And I was like, yes, I know who this is. And it was the boy who I almost adopted way back then. And he contacted me and we were both like crying on the phone. It was so amazing to reconnect. And he's like, I remember asking you, because he did. He said, I remember asking you if you would adopt me, and you said that you would try. And so now we're friends on Facebook, and I've shared the story a few times on Facebook and things like that. And so that's just kind of the connection. The whole circle brings you back to the importance of what you do as a martial artist and an instructor.
Sure. and it's in a difficult world today, having good mentors and good role models, I think, is key, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, it
whatever
absolutely
walk
is.
of life, Gavin and I, we're a big advocate of having mentors, and if we can give some of that back, and that's what we use. Well, certainly I myself and yourself, Gavin, we use martial arts as a way of being able to help mentor students and children, and even in some cases adults as well, and give them that little bit of advice which that may not necessarily have access to. So no, very good. So talk us through your book then. So your first book is The Martial Arts Woman.
Yes.
So
don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong like I did at the beginning.
Oh no, I'm not going to, Gavin. Believe me. How did that come about then?
Well, The Martial Arts Woman, I've always been a writer. I started by writing for some martial art magazines like the Martial Art Industry Association, or Maya, the magazine, MA Success.
Yeah.
I had sent an inquiry in, and John Corcoran, rest in peace, he liked my article. And so I submitted several articles, and then I started writing feature articles for other martial art schools. So I wrote for that one, and I wrote for Martial Art Illustrated UK.
Okay, cool.
So anyway, I was I was already doing a lot of writing and blogging, and I decided that it would be great to write a book. And a friend of mine was a publisher at the time, and he contacted me and he said, have you thought about writing a book about something? And I said, yeah, but I don't know what. And he really I said, I have a lot of blog stories that I can convert into chapters about being a martial art woman, things that have happened to me, personal things, and how I apply martial arts. And he said, wouldn't it be great to get stories from other women too about martial arts, what martial arts means to them, or why they started, and all that kind of thing. So he gave me a list of names, and I didn't know any of them. And I just started contacting these women and asking them if they would like to write a chapter for the book. So I have so many, Karen Eden, she submitted chapters, Restita De Jesus, and there's a whole list of really great martial art women, some who are known and some who are not. Yeah. And I compiled this book. It took me a couple of years, and I compiled a very, what I consider, interesting and thought-provoking book about martial arts and martial art women. So I still have that. It's available on Amazon, and I hope or I can send signed copies. So if anybody's interested. And then my second book is called Martial Art Inspirations for Everyone. And it's sort of a daily journal or a reflection that you can look at each day and read a little bit, a couple of paragraphs about maybe positivity or overcoming obstacles or feeling better about your life, applying martial arts to your life, and just little readings that you can read every day. And right now I'm working on my third book that I started a few years ago, and it's called How to Start Your Own Martial Art Program. And that is about starting a program like I did in a community center, YMCA, a location that's not brick and mortar maybe, or something that's portable. And so I'm actually editing that one right now. So I'm just an avid writer. I enjoy writing, continue to write the blog. I continue to write for magazines whenever they ask. And so it's just also a part of me. But the books are always positive, and they're always send a message to others that they can succeed and they can overcome.
Sure. Yeah, sounds interesting. I'm going to have to get a copy of that. One of my daughters, again, avid martial artist, but she's at that age now where she's, wondering what she's going to do in the world. So I think, she's keen to become she's a martial arts instructor. And she's not quite got the confidence to step out on her own. So I think that'd be a really good read for her. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Okay then. So from the book and the blogging, you've now moved into the more, I'll say, digital format, the audio digital format of podcasting. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I've done a little podcasting in the past, just based on maybe pulling up a blog and reading it and publishing that. But when a friend of mine, and I've been on several podcast shows, but when a friend of mine asked me to be on her show, I said, okay, let me give it a try. And doing that, I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. Why haven't I expanded my horizons a little bit? And I decided then that I wanted to give more of a platform to martial art women. So like my book did initially, this was an opportunity to actually interview martial art women. And I thought, that sounds really good. I don't know how to do any of this, but I'm going to give it a try. And found a few guinea pigs. I'm like, hey, would you want to be on my podcast? I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I have this software and I think I can connect you to it and we can just talk and I'll ask you questions. And what do you think? And she's like, yeah, I'll be your guinea pig. So I did that with a couple of women for the first couple podcasts, and I got a rhythm and I figured out what I wanted to do. And so that's how it all started. And just
it's quite nerve-wracking in the beginning, isn't it? I don't know if you found it nerve-wracking. I mean, obviously we stand up as martial arts instructors all day long and talk to hundreds. I could deliver a martial arts class to thousands of people and it not bother me. But then once we sat in front of the microphone, it was almost like I was I felt absolutely exhausted because, again, it's a new skill. It's a new skill that you're trying to learn, isn't it? You can't just have a list of questions and go, right, okay, well, we're talking about your book. Okay, let's talk about, you have to let it flow, and you have to always be listening intently so you can understand the type of questions that you're going to ask relating on the answers that you're given. And it is a whole new skill to learn. I mean, talking about the martial artists, we always, I always try and, Taekwondo obviously is a belt from yellow belt all the way up to black belt. And I try to grade myself in whatever it is I do. So I'm like, well, podcasting, I was a yellow belt. And I'd like to think
I think you were a white belt at the first.
I was definitely a white belt.
Definitely a white belt.
I'd like to think I've probably got to at least a green, blue stripe by now. But again, it's all about that continued journey, isn't it? And having those goals and trying to better yourself.
Yeah. It's been really fun and interesting. I do have a little bit of a flow now. I don't feel as nervous about it. A couple of times I had comments like, oh, we can't hear the host very well. There's always, and I don't have any fancy equipment. I have a phone, I have this, and that's what I do.
That's all you need.
So, I was like, okay, I want to make sure the sound works and that kind of thing, that everybody can hear everything that's being said. I add a little music in, it feels a lot more comfortable now. And I'm really grateful to the women who want to be on the show. And they're always contacting me. Can I be on the show? I want to talk about this. I have this story to tell. This is important to me. This is important for women to know. And so, just women from all over the world. I've had several from the UK, Canada, the States, of course. I have one coming up and she's in Sweden. So it's open to any martial art woman who has a story to tell. It's not just for those famous women or the women who everybody knows already, although they're on the show too. It's for everybody.
Are there any particular stories that really stand out? Any of those moments where you sit there and you're almost like, wow, we've had a couple, haven't we, on our podcast? But when you
I think the most difficult stories always stand out with me. The ones where someone is abused for half her life, or the one where she grew up in Mexico in some type of cult. There are very interesting stories, and you have to think to yourself, how did you ever get through that? Yeah. Well, in essence, martial arts help them get through it. So those stories, they're difficult to hear sometimes, but they're so robust in their story and how that woman moved from that to becoming a martial artist. There's just so many stories that stand out. And then there's the interesting ones like Kathy Long, who talks about her difficult youth. Anne Maria DeMars talks about when she received the championship for judo. So they're all so empowering stories. I could probably just go on and on. They all inspire me in some way.
Yeah, and it's quite. Sorry, Jack, you go.
So when you first started your podcast, what things did you feel for yourself that you weren't very strong with and you had to work on? Were any areas there that you thought, being critical of yourself?
Yeah. I'm a planner, so I'm not good with sometimes just on the spot things. So I really had to, like you were saying earlier, I really had to listen and follow up with questions. And that was a little bit difficult for me. I do kind of plan out my podcasts. I always ask my guests for bios. and I create questions off those bios.
Mhm.
So that's one way that I overcome some of my own personal difficulties with getting through the podcast. What's nice is that it's recorded, so I can go back and edit and make it sound a little bit better.
I did for Gavin's last birthday. I think it must have been about 30 minutes of his best bits, and they can comprised of you know what I mean?
Yeah, all right, Jackie, we've heard this one before.
But we don't have that trouble now, do we, Gavin? Also, you don't have that trouble now.
we just ignore it now. That's the funny thing, because I mean, I was quite critical of myself in the early days, because I was like, well, you know, what do people going to think? And I'm umming and I'm erring and I'm maybe forgetting my words and I'm messing up the beginning, you know, joking aside, where I think in the early days we was really critical, and now we're like, well, you know, I don't really care anymore, because it's authentic, it's real. We're just doing what we're doing. We're just having a chat, and that's just what it is. And it's funny listening to you saying that you're a planner, because that's almost like the polar opposite of me. I don't plan anything, you know, and you know, always, and I'd say Jackie's you're probably sitting a little bit. I'd say you're in the middle. You do plan a little bit, but you're more sitting just more sitting towards my side.
Yeah.
Where, you know, sometimes it catches you out because, you know, you maybe not done your research enough, but at the same time, things come across as authentic because you are genuinely meeting someone for the first time, and you are finding out things about them. It's like, wow, that's amazing. And it's genuine, you know, because you didn't know that. It's not like you knew it before and you're trying to make it sound genuine.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What I mean, for myself, one of the things that I really didn't like was hearing my own voice. I think I talk.
Sounds horrible, mate. Sounds horrible. I have nightmares every night.
No, it's a great English accent, Gavin. How dare you? But hearing it back, it's like listening to a phone with an echo on it, and I really didn't like that. And it took me, you know, I don't listen to the episodes as much now, because I was the editor, or I did all the editing, the audio editing. I had to sit there and listen to it. And for the first 2 or 3 interviews, I absolutely hated it. But now we've got someone else that edits them, which is great. So it allows us to do other things. But prior to that, we you know, just got used to it, and it's my voice. It's just that I'm not used to hearing it the way other people hear it.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something kind of similar. So when I started the book, The Martial Arts Women, the publisher, and I ended up buying the publishing rights back from him and self-publishing it. But at that time, he said, okay, you're in the process of writing this book. You have to promote it. So that means you need to start showing pictures of yourself so people get to know who you are. Because I just had like this little basic Facebook page. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you know, pictures of you doing martial arts or whatever, kicks, whatever. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I found a friend of mine. I said, hey, he was kind of an amateur photographer. I said, can you take a few pictures of me in my uniform so that I can post them on Facebook? And so he's like, sure. And so he created these really nice pictures of me, and I started posting them and getting all these likes. And I was like, wow, this really works. You know, I hate seeing my pictures, but I guess it's something that works. So now, you know, I've been posting pictures for years of myself doing kicks, which I'm known for. They're not technically perfect kicks all the time. I use kicks as a way to empower and inspire people to say, hey, look, I'm 57 years old. I can still do these kicks. If I can do this, you can do whatever you want to.
What's your favorite kick?
I usually do like a side kick or a round kick. I mean, they're not fancy, but they're pretty to look at. And I also do these like really high, like stretch kicks that people love, you know, because my foot's up here, and, you know, here's this kind of older woman still, you know, doing her thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because when you were saying you didn't like to hear your voice back, I also didn't like to look at my own pictures, but now I don't care anymore, and I just take them and put them on there. And
you just
and you get used to it.
To it, don't you? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You do.
But yeah, so much fun.
So what's next for you then, Andrea? What's you sound obviously what are you planning next, I suppose?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm working on another book. I have also a 4th book that I'm working on, and it has nothing to do with martial arts. It's love poetry and wedding vows, because I'm also write poetry. So I hope to publish that out. I mean, I'm always doing something. And when I commit to something like podcasting or blogging, it's a long-term commitment. I'm not one to start something and then give it up. So I do work full time. I have to have time to work out myself. I work on books. I work on magazine articles. I'm always promoting other women on my page. I'm always taking pictures of me kicking and doing martial arts or just smiling, and saying, hey, have a good day.
And the kids and the family.
Yeah, and a family. Although 3 of my kids don't live at home anymore. They're moved out. But I also have, and I'll mention it here, I also have a morning talk show on Friday mornings on Facebook Live called The Java Buzz. And I do it with 2 other martial art women, Restita De Jesus and Jane Larkin Miser. And it came about because Jane recognized that all 3 of us really love coffee. So we're like, hey, what kind of show can we create around coffee, martial arts, and, just fun and motivation and helping people be inspired for their upcoming weekend during this COVID time. And so we started this live Facebook show, probably a month or 2 ago. And it's so much fun. We always give motivation. We always talk a little bit about coffee. We talk a little bit about martial arts. We try to inspire people. We show pictures of ourselves from way back, so people can kind of get a chuckle out of it. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's so funny. So that's the next big thing on the agenda that I'm working on, is that morning talk show. I just keep going. What can I say? There's always something.
Yeah. So what's motivating you? What motivates you then?
That's such a good question. And I wish I knew the entire motivation, because my husband even said, you've been on this theme about the martial arts woman for years. What is it that's so important to you? And I guess because martial arts touched my life in so many ways and gave me so many opportunities, it opened a lot of doors for me. And if not for martial arts, I'm sure I would be a really different person today. I'm not sure I would be as happy or fit or inspired to continue to motivate others as I would be today.
I think it's without a doubt, it's true, isn't it? And it's the same for me and Jackie, and I think most people involved. I think we lead quite a happy life, and I think it's about being happy inside, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And you can only get that through, I suppose, things you've experienced through your life and the place where you are now. And it's the social side, isn't it, as well? The social side of martial arts, the people you've met. I mean, me and Jackie met each other nearly 40 years ago, and we've been friends, through that journey. And we've done martial arts together, and we've done competitions together. Now we've got businesses together, and but it's just having that common interest and that common ground with other people.
And the platform, the martial arts platform, has been such a great vehicle for us through life, really, hasn't it, Gavin?
Yeah, I agree.
To get people involved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and martial arts really has that mind, body, spirit aspect. I do a lot of positivity chats and try to mesh martial arts and positivity, because people love martial arts. Even if they're not involved in it, they like to hear stories about it. Mm-hmm. So I try to use it as a vehicle too, to share how to be more positive in your life. A lot of my blog, which is themartialartswoman.com, a lot of my blog brings in martial art and positivity aspects that anybody can read. You don't need to be a martial artist. So positivity has been another strong way that I've tried to reach out to people. And only when you're positive about yourself and about your life can you find the success that you want. So it's so important that you learn to overcome obstacles and difficulties in your life as much as you possibly can. I'm like everybody. I'm positive, yes, but I have down days, and I have difficult obstacles, and I have situations that I don't want to face. But when I face those things with a bit of positivity by telling myself, I can do this, I can get through this, then it changes everything, and it gives me the opportunity to continue to succeed. And I like to share that kind of mindset and thought with others.
And I think especially now as well with the COVID thing. I mean, you know, you hear so much about the suicide rate going up and depression and all these things that happened during the COVID period.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand. I mean, I would consider myself a very positive, outgoing person. I don't really have mood swings as such. I'm very level-headed. But there's been times over
pretty
the COVID.
boring, yeah.
Boring, yeah, just boring, basically. But there's been times, certainly over the COVID thing, it's really hit me, and I thought, you know what, I just don't. I'm not dealing with this at the moment very well, you know. And I go through a couple of days like that, and I know Jackson's been through the same sort of thing because Jackie didn't, you know, he's in a house, didn't have a garden, which was quite tough when everything was locked down. I know, you know, Jackie was in the military, so he's not as soft as us. But there was certainly time I thought, God, you know, I'd like to consider myself quite a level-headed person, and I'm not dealing with this at the moment very well. That people that are already depressed, or people that are already going through a bad time, or these people who have maybe suffered with depression and have finally got themselves back on their feet, they've finally got their job, their dream job, and all of a sudden it's been taken away from them. Yeah, it must be devastating.
Yeah. Very difficult.
It really
it's been a difficult period, I think, all around, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Most definitely. Okay, so we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Last and final question, and we ask this to all of our guests, and we use this as a bit of a quote on other things that we do. So what advice would you give to a younger self having the experience that you've had in life now then, Andrea?
You know, to my younger self, I was not a confident younger person. I was not a confident young woman. And so my advice really would be to believe in yourself and to surround yourself with positive people and to try the things you want to do. I was always afraid to try new things until I started martial arts. So my advice to my younger self would really have been, I wish I had started martial arts a little earlier, but if not, I wish I had at least pursued something that I wanted to do a little bit earlier. I waited until I was 26 years old to finally learn martial arts, to finally become a writer. You know, I've been writing since I was 10 years old. I wouldn't call myself a writer until I was like 50 years old and started writing for magazines and everything. And then I said, hey, guess what? I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, but I wouldn't allow myself to call myself that. So it's
that self-doubt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's self-doubt, and it's something that I wish my younger self didn't have. But on the other hand, I've learned a lot, and I can honestly talk to people who are doubtful about themselves and tell them you don't have to be that way. And so I think that's what I would have told my younger self, my younger version.
Good for you.
Perfect. No, that's absolutely fantastic. Andrea, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. So thank you very much for taking the time out.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll make sure that your website and your podcast and all the stuff you've talked about, we'll make sure we get it promoted when we send this article out. Yeah, for definite.
I so much appreciate you guys and everything that you're doing, and thank you for having me on the show. If you need anything, please let me know.
Yeah, we've got a few articles at the event, haven't we, Jackson?
Yeah. Believe it or not. Okay, Andrea, thank you very much. Thanks again.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.